The dust that day on the road to Mesilla rose in slow, lazy spirals, as if the desert hadn't yet decided whether it cared enough to move, and Billy the Kid rode right through the middle of it, hat low, shirt sticking to his back, thinking only about staying ahead of the law and getting to Fort Sumner before somebody with good aim and bad judgment decided his story should end early. But all those private plans died the moment he heard a girl's voice, ragged with panic, cutting across the heat like a whip crack. Billy reined in sharply on the outskirts of a lonely trading post, a few weather-beaten buildings, a corral, a crooked sign that had lost the will to stand straight. In front of the main shack, a girl of about 18 stood on an overturned crate, hands tied in front of her, lips pressed tight to keep them from shaking. Her dress was the plain calico of a ranch daughter, dust-stained and torn at the hem, but there was nothing plain in her eyes. They were bright and furious, even with fear running behind them like a river in flood. Beside her, a heavy-set man with a sunburned neck and the defeated shoulders of someone who'd made too many bad bargains wrung a battered hat in his hands. Opposite him, neat as a banker in hell, stood Bartholomew Crane, a rancher whose name Billy had heard whispered from Las Cruces to Lincoln County. A man whose cattle ate other men's dreams for breakfast. Crane held a leather satchel that sagged with the weight of money. "I ain't going with him, Pa," the girl was saying through clenched teeth. "I don't care what you signed, Lily," the father muttered, not quite daring to look at her. "You hush now. You don't understand how bad it is. Crane, here's being generous. This clears the note on the land, the feed, he's buying me," she snapped. "Not the land, me." Crane offered a thin, controlled smile. "You'll have a comfortable life, Miss Hale. Fine house, fine dresses. That's more than most get in this territory. And I paid for that right." Billy slid down from his horse, patting its neck as if he were just another traveler looking for shade. He tied the reins to a post with slow, unhurried movements, letting his eyes drink in everything. Two of Crane's men lounged by the corral with rifles leaning against the rails. Another chewed on a toothpick near the shack door. Inside, Billy spotted the flash of a star, local law, maybe, or just someone pretending to be. He ran a hand over his jaw and stepped closer, boots crunching in the gravel. "Hot day for a sale," he drawled. The father shot him a quick, ashamed glance. Crane's eyes flicked to the newcomer, cool and measuring. "Private business, friend. Keep riding." Billy ignored that. He met Lily's gaze, saw the fury there, the pulse beating in her throat beneath the rope around her wrists. "You don't seem like you want to be sold, miss." "I don't," she said, before her father could cut in. "But apparently I don't get a say." Crane's mouth flattened. "She's a minor in my contract," he said. "The papers are signed. Preacher's on his way. After that, she's Mrs. Crane, and my property, in the eyes of any court that matters." Billy's jaw tightened. 18 didn't feel like a minor to him. Not in a land where boys died at 17 and nobody blinked, but this wasn't about law. This was about power, and who had it. "How much?" Billy asked, nodding at the sagging satchel of bills. Crane frowned. "You in the market for land, boy?" "No," Billy said. Eyes still on Lily, wondering what a man pays to buy a life. Crane gave a humorless smirk and snapped open the satchel, just enough for sun to glint on stacked green. $10,000, he said. Even the flies seemed to hesitate. Lily's father sucked in a breath, as if he still couldn't quite believe he'd agreed. In that moment, Billy understood the weight of it. 10,000 was a fortune big enough to move mountains or bury bodies under them. It was also enough to put every half-starved gun in New Mexico on your trail if you crossed the man laying it down. Billy let out a low whistle. That's a lot to pay for a woman who doesn't even want to share your supper. Lily gave the faintest twitch of a smile before she caught herself. Crane's eyes narrowed. "You like your teeth, stranger?" Billy shrugged. Most of. Inside the shack, the figure with the star stepped into view. A local deputy with a whiskey-soft gut and nervous eyes. He spoke up, but his voice wobbled. "Mr. Crane has the papers." It's all proper. Sometimes a man's gotta do what he's gotta do to keep his farm. Territory don't make it easy. Billy looked at Lily's father. That true? You gotta do this. Amos Hale's eyes were wet around the edges, but he lifted his chin with brittle defiance. You think I want to? He snapped. You think I ain't thought about every other way? The bank's already taken half the land. Drought took the rest. Crane holds the note on the house, the stock, the seed for next year, that'll never come. He said if I handed Lily over, he'd clear it all. Otherwise my wife and sons starve. Your sons? Lily choked. You mean the boys you'd never dream of selling? Just the daughter. It's not like that, he murmured, but there was no strength in it. It's exactly like that, Billy said, voice gone flat. Crane shifted, impatience leaking into his posture. I won't be insulted on my own business. Hale, untie her, and bring her inside. We'll wait for the preacher in the parlor. I'm not going, Lily hissed. Crane's hand twitched toward her arm. Billy moved then, faster than the thought had time to fully form. With a flick of his wrist, his revolver jumped into his hand, barrel leveled not at a man, but at the rope that bound Lily's wrists. One shot cracked the air. The rope splintered, frayed ends, whipping free. Everyone froze for a heartbeat. The deputy, halfway through a curse, Lily staring at her liberated hands. Now, Billy said softly to her, eyes never leaving Crane's, you run. For half a second, she didn't move, as if the idea of freedom was something she had to remember how to wear. Then her body caught up, and she leaped from the crate, landing hard in the dirt, yanking her skirts as she sprinted for the tethered horses. Crane's men lunged for their rifles. Billy fired again, this time low, hitting a water barrel perched by the shack. It exploded in a burst of staves and spraying water, dousing the deputy and sending him stumbling, cursing, into Crane. One of the ranch hands slipped, crashing into his partner. In the confusion, Billy vaulted toward the corral, grabbed Lily by the arm, and practically threw her into his saddle. Hold on, he barked, swinging up behind her. She clutched the horn as he dug in his heels. The horse surged forward, nearly plowing through one of Crane's men. A shot rang out, then another, dirt jumping at the horse's feet. Lily flinched, ducking instinctively, pressed against Billy's chest as they tore away from the trading post in a storm of dust and shouted curses. Behind them, Crane's voice rose above the chaos, sharp and venomous. I'll have your head for this, boy. You hear me? I'll buy it, piece by piece. They rode hard until the trading post was a smear on the horizon. When Billy finally slowed the horse to a lathered walk in the shelter of a shallow arroyo, Lily twisted around in the saddle, eyes blazing. What did you do? She demanded. Do you have any idea what you just started? Billy let out a thin, breathless laugh. Seemed like it started back there, when your PA decided to trade you for a receipt. You don't understand, she shot back. Crane doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. There's nowhere he doesn't have somebody on his payroll. Yeah, Billy said quietly. I figured from the weight of that satchel. He tilted his hat back so she could see his face clearly. The wind tugged a lock of hair across his eyes. Name's Billy. Billy what? She asked, suspiciously. Billy Bonney. Billy Antrim. He hesitated. Most folks just say Billy the Kid. For a moment she only stared, and in that moment, the name seemed almost absurd. A legend that didn't quite fit the dust-streaked young man behind her. Then recognition slid over her features like a shadow. I've heard of you, she said slowly. All the territory has. Don't believe half of it, he muttered. Which half? Take your pick. She turned away again, gripping the saddle horn, face complicated. My name's Lily, she said after a moment. Lily Hale, for now. That man back there, he's my father, whether I like it or not. You want to go back? Billy asked. I can still ride you there. They'll be waitin' with open arms and a nice monogrammed set of chains. The sharp breath she drew in was all answer he needed. No, she said, voice rough. I'd rather die out here than go back to Crane. All right then. Billy nudged the horse onward, toward the distant smear of blue mountains. Fort Sumner's a ways off, but I got friends scattered between here and there. We'll find a place to lay low, and when Crane comes, she asked. When my father sends riders. Billy's mouth hitched at one corner. Then we give them a reason to wish they'd stayed home. Back at the trading post, Bartholomew Crane watched the dust of their passing, with a face like carved bone. His fine shirt was splattered with muddy water. His hat knocked askew by the collision with the flailing deputy. He straightened it with careful fingers, gaze never leaving the horizon. You let a boy with one gun and a flea-bit horse make fools of you, he said softly to his men. That was Billy the Kid, one of them muttered defensively. Mr. Crane. I know who he is, Crane snapped. I also know money buys bullets, and bullets erase legends. He turned to the deputy, whose badge gleamed weakly in the sun. You got a telegraph wire in that shack of yours? The deputy swallowed. Yes sir. Runs to Mesilla, then on. Crane nodded, already reaching for his satchel. Then let's make sure the whole territory hears about this little insult. By nightfall, in smoky saloons and sheriff's offices and outlaw camps spread from El Paso to Las Vegas, New Mexico, men were reading the words Crane dictated that afternoon. Wanted William Bonney, alias Billy the Kid, for theft of property, assault on a duly sworn officer, and interference in lawful contract. Reward $15,000, dead or alive, payable in gold coin by Bartholomew Crane, Crane Ranch, Mesilla Valley. Additional reward $5,000 for the live capture and return of one Lily Hale, age 18, fair hair, blue eyes, believed to be in company with above suspect. In one dim cantina, on the edge of nowhere, a woman in worn leather trousers and a faded red shirt traced the reward notice with calloused fingers. Her hair was a wild tumble of dark waves tucked under a slouch hat, and her eyes were a hard whiskey amber that had seen too much dust and too many bad men. Cassidy Ward, cast to most, cast the whip to those who'd seen her draw, snorted softly. 15,000 Henry, she murmured to herself. You always did know how to make an exit. A man beside her leaned over, breath sour, with cheap tequila. You know him? Cass folded the paper twice, until Billy's inked eyes looked up at her, from a square of parchment like some haunting ghost. Let's just say, she said, sliding the notice into her vest, if anyone's gonna cash in on that boy, it's gonna be me. Out in the desert, Lily and Billy made a small camp in the lee of a rock formation shaped like a broken tooth. The stars came out one by one, cold and indifferent. Billy kept the fire low, feeding it sparingly, the glow carving sharp planes into his young face. Lily sat with her knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them, staring into the embers. You don't talk much, she said finally. You talk enough for both of us, he replied. The ghost of a smile flitted across her lips. You always this generous to girls on the road, cutting them loose from marriage contracts, and making half the territory want to kill them. Only on Tuesdays, he said. You're unlucky, today's Tuesday. She studied him for a beat. Why did you do it? She asked. You don't know me. You don't owe me. Now you've got every bounty hunter, and half the sheriffs between here and Kansas, looking to put you in the ground, or drag you in by the ankles. Billy poked the fire with a twig, watching sparks skitter upward. Couldn't watch it, he said, at last. Man buying a woman like he's buying a wagon. Seen enough ugly in this world. Didn't feel like watching one more piece of it. That's it, she pressed. You're not hoping to collect some reward yourself, or trade me off to someone else. He gave her a sidelong look that would have been amused if there weren't so much tired behind it. You always assume the worst? Often enough I'm right, she said. My father, her voice cracked around the word. She swallowed, and started again. My father used to sit on the porch, and promise May he'd never let anything bad touch us. Then the rain stopped for 2 years. The bank came with papers, Crane came with papers. Turns out a man's promises get real cheap when money gets scarce. Billy nodded slowly. I've seen it. Men sell their souls cheap. Sometimes they sell other people's souls, and call it duty. She looked at him over the fire. What about you? What made you what you are? He shrugged one shoulder. Ain't got time to lay out that whole tale. Short version is, I did things men with badges didn't like. Some of it they're right about. Some of it they ain't. Either way, it all ends with a rope, if they get close enough. You ever kill a man who didn't deserve it? She asked bluntly. The question caught him. He stiffened, eyes lifting from the fire to hers. In the silence that followed, the wind whispered through the rocks like a chorus of ghosts. I've killed men, he said, voice low. Some of 'em I still see when I shut my eyes. You ever killed a man? No, she said. But I've thought about it. Then we're both carrying more than most folks admit to. He rose abruptly. Get some sleep, Lily Hale. We ride at first light. Over the next days, the land became a quilt of danger. They slipped through mesquite thickets to avoid trails where wanted posters fluttered. In one town, they arrived just long enough to see Billy's face nailed up beside an older drawing, the ink on the new one still wet. Lily stared at the extra lines of script underneath. 15,000. Her own description beneath it, 5,000 promised for her live return. That's more money than I've ever heard of in one place, she whispered. Crane must really want you back, Billy said. Makes sense. Men like that don't like losing. He doesn't want me, she said bitterly. He wants ownership of me. There's a difference. They kept moving, but the net tightened. Bounty hunters shadowed them, dark figures on distant ridgelines. Once, a trio of men tried to corner them near a dry riverbed. Billy's gun spoke 3 times. 2 men stayed down. The third crawled away, clutching a bleeding leg, cursing the kid's name. Lily watched with a pale face and steady eyes. You didn't hesitate, she murmured. Later. They would have killed you, he said simply. Or worse, crippled me, and taken you. You could have taken a bounty for me yourself, she said. Walked into Crane's parlor with me bound and collected $5,000 to start a new life. Billy snorted. Hate to break it to you, but I ain't much good at new lives. Every time I try, the old one finds me. In a tiny town called San Miguel, they pushed their luck and went in for supplies. The main street was a hard line of buildings with porches sagging toward the dust, and every eye turned when Billy and Lily rode in. At the general store, the bell over the door gave them away. The shopkeeper pretended not to notice the resemblance between the boy in front of him and the drawing tacked outside, but his hands shook as he filled a sack with beans and coffee. That'll be $3, he stammered. Billy dropped the coins on the counter, his gaze flicking to the side window. Across the street, a man in a tan coat had paused near a notice board, studying it too long. We should go, Lily murmured. My skin's crawlin'. Billy nodded barely. Back door, he said to the shopkeeper. You got one? The man's eyes darted to the curtain at the back. Yeah, go, I won't say nothing, I swear. As they slipped out, Lily hissed, why help us? You could have shouted for the sheriff and gotten rich. The shopkeeper swallowed. I got a daughter about your age, he said. World's already cruel enough to girls without me lending a hand. They almost made it clean. Almost. But as they hit the alley, a voice rang out behind them. Billy the Kid, hold it right there. They turned to see a sheriff's star glinting on a broad chest, hand resting heavy on a revolver. 2 deputies flanked him. Behind them, men with hungry eyes lingered in the shadows, too cautious to step in first. You're under arrest, the sheriff announced. You and the girl both. Don't make this hard. Billy's fingers hovered near his gun. He thought about the narrow alley, the angle of the roofs, the way the sheriff's stance said he'd done this before. You Crane's man? Billy asked. The sheriff smiled mirthlessly. Crane's money spends the same as anyone's. Holster your iron. Lily shifted slightly behind Billy's shoulder, eyes scanning for escape. You gotta sell for a girl you're sellin' back to slavery, she called out. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. The sheriff's smile faltered. Ain't my concern what a man does with his legal wife. She ain't his wife, Billy snapped. And if you can't tell right from wrong without a piece of paper, you don't deserve that star. Color rose in the lawman's cheeks. His hand jerked toward his gun. Last chance, boy. Billy moved, The alley exploded into thunder and smoke. He fired first, the bullet slamming into the sheriff's shoulder instead of his chest, because for reasons he didn't have time to examine. He couldn't bring himself to drop another lawman dead in the street. Deputies dove for cover, firing wild. Lily seized Billy's arm, dragging him toward a stack of crates. Splinters flew as bullets chewed the wood. "This way," she shouted, spotting a gap between buildings. They scrambled through, boots slipping in trash, emerging into a deserted side yard. Horses whinnied somewhere. Somebody yelled. Billy grabbed her by the waist and practically threw her onto their horse. They barreled down a back lane, then swung out of town in a shower of curses and lead that whined too close, but by some grace or luck, didn't find flesh. That night, camped in another hollow where the wind never quite rested, the tension in Lily finally cracked. "They were going to shoot you in the back for money," she said, voice shaking with leftover fury. "They didn't care who you were, what you'd done, whether Crane was right or not. Just the number on that paper." "Welcome to the West," Billy said quietly. "Been like that a while now." "Is that why you became what you are?" she demanded. "Because the world's rotten, so you might as well be too." He stared at her, wounded and irritated all at once. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She hugged herself, drew in a deep breath that seemed to hurt. "Sorry," she muttered. I hate feeling like a prize hog at auction. And now I've dragged you into it." "You didn't drag me," he said. "I walked in on my own boots. Don't flatter yourself." For a second, she looked offended, then she caught the faint ghost of teasing in his eyes and let it soften the air between them. Days later, when the land folded into low hills and scrub that offered too many hiding places and not enough cover, they found a lone line shack, half collapsed but still standing, its roof holding off just enough sky to make it shelter. They were low on food and lower on luck. Billy left Lily inside, with strict instructions and his second pistol, while he circled wide to see if anyone was trailing them. The air felt wrong all day, like the pause before lightning. When he came back, the wrongness stepped out of the shadows. "Evenin', Henry," said the woman with the whiskey amber eyes, the barrel of her revolver resting easy on him. Billy froze, one step from the door, hands instinctively lifting. "Cass," he breathed. Her smile was all teeth. "Thought you'd forgotten my Christian name." "Didn't forget," he said carefully. "Just thought you might have traded it in when you started robbing stages." "Says the boy who started a war and then walked through it like a ghost," she shot back. "Drop the gun." He let his revolver fall into the dust. "Lily," he called quietly, "stay inside." "Who's that?" Lily's voice drifted from the shack, cautious. Cass's eyebrow flicked. "You travelin' with a girl now? Guess your tastes got more respectable." Two more figures emerged from behind the shack, men with that particular loose, predatory stance of professional trouble. One relieved Billy of his knife and spare pistol. Another slid a noose of rope around his wrists. "Tie him good," Cass said. "He's slippery when he's scared." "I ain't scared," Billy muttered, "just annoyed." "You will be." They shoved him onto a chair inside the shack, wrists bound behind him to the backrest. Lily stood in the corner, breathing hard, eyes wide. She had the pistol he'd left her, but it dangled uncertainly from her hand, unused to its weight. "Drop it, honey," Cass advised. "You ain't gonna get a shot off before one of my boys paints the wall with your brains." Lily's jaw clenched, but she slowly lowered the gun. "Who are you?" she demanded. "His executioner?" "Something like that," Cass said. She tipped her hat back, looking Billy over, with a gaze that flipped between amusement and old hurt. "You gonna introduce us, Henry?" "This is Lily Hale," Billy muttered. "Lily, this is Cassidy Ward. We used to ride together." "Ride together," Cass repeated, tasting the phrase like something bitter. "That's a pretty way to say it." Lily's eyes sharpened. "Were you?" Cass spared her having to finish. "We were more than partners," she said easily. "Once upon a time, the great Billy the Kid said he'd marry me when the shooting stopped." Color crept into Billy's face. "I said a lot of things I wasn't smart enough to mean," he said. "That's one way of putting it," Cass said coolly. "Another way is you lied. You left. You chose your vengeance and your reputation over me and everybody else with a stake in your soul." Lily glanced between them. "What happened?" she pressed. "He said there was a war."
Cass said. Lincoln County. Men with money sending boys with guns to settle their arguments. I rode with Billy for a while. So did my little brother Caleb. Skinny kid, big ears. Thought Henry here hung the moon. Her voice roughened. One night we got pinned down outside a barn. Regulators on one side, Dolan's men on the other. Bullets cutting the air into pieces. Caleb got hit in the leg, went down screaming. I was trying to drag him, but the fire was too heavy. Henry there had a clear shot on the man who dropped my brother. Instead of helping me get Caleb to cover, he went after that man like a damn bloodhound. Left us in the dirt. She stared at Billy. You remember what you said when you came back and found him dead? Billy swallowed. His throat felt full of sand. I said I was sorry, he rasped. You said, Cass corrected. I got the man who did it. That's something. As if killing the shooter made up for leaving Caleb to bleed out. Lily's eyes had gone very still. Is that true? She asked Billy. I didn't mean it the way it sounds, he said, weakly. Guns were everywhere. If I'd let that man keep firing, he would have dropped more of us. You thought your revenge mattered more than my brother's life, Cass cut in. You always think the killing matters more. That's all you are, Henry. Story after story of who you shot and why. Nothing else sticks to you. Not promises. Not people. Lily looked stricken. And after? She asked Cass. After the war? After he told me he'd come back for me, Cass said softly. Said when things cooled down, he'd ride south and we'd find some little town where folks didn't know our names. Start over. Fresh. I waited a year. Picked up jobs with men I didn't trust because I thought Henry would be there any day to take me away from it. Then I heard he'd robbed another store, killed another deputy, gotten his name in bigger letters while I was still sitting by a window like a fool. That's when I figured it out. Billy the Kid only loves two things. The sound of his own legend and the next man he can put in the ground to feed it. The words hung in the hot, close air of the shack. Billy's shoulders sagged against the rough wood of the chair. He didn't try to deny it again. What defense could he offer that wouldn't sound like another excuse? You here to kill me? He asked quietly. Cass flicked the reward notice from her vest and waved it. 15,000 says I'm here to sell you, she said. Dead or alive. I ain't decided which you're worth yet.
Cass toppled, the chair scraping, her gun hand jerking wide. A shot went wild, punching a hole in the shack wall. In the explosion of motion, the man with the knife surged to his feet. The other woke with a shout. But Lily's tackle had knocked Cass directly into Billy's chair. The impact cracked something in the old, half-rotten wood. Billy felt a sliver bite into his wrist, then another. He twisted hard, ignoring the flare of pain as the rope scraped skin raw. Cass hit the floor, breath whooshing out of her. Lily kicked the gun from her hand. It skittered across the boards. "Grab it!" she cried. Billy wrenched, felt the rope give another inch, then another. One of Cass's men lunged for Lily, fingers closing on her hair. Billy finally tore his hands free. Pain screamed through his shoulders as he swung his bound arms around, catching the man behind the knees. The outlaw crashed to the floor. The other grabbed for the fallen gun, but Lily was quicker, snatching it up with both bound hands and firing. The bullet slammed into the man's shoulder, spinning him into the wall. He howled, clutching the wound. Cass, gasping, reached for a knife in her boot, but Billy was already on her, rolling her onto her stomach and yanking her arms behind her. "You always did underestimate me," he panted, wrapping the same rope around her wrists that had held his. "Story of your life, ain't it, Henry?" she rasped. "Never tie things up right till they're already half gone." Lily stood over them, chest heaving, the gun trembling slightly in her grip. "What do we do with them?" she asked. Billy hesitated, then tightened the knot on Cass's wrists and moved to bind the wounded men as well. "We leave them," he said. "Someone'll find them before they die of thirst." Cass barked a mirthless laugh. "Look at you," she jeered, "so righteous now, sparing lives. You didn't spare Caleb. You won't spare this girl when it comes down to choosing her or your own hide." Lily flinched at that. "You can't know that," she said. "I do," Cass insisted. "He'll run. He always does when the walls close in. One day you'll need him to choose you, and he'll choose himself instead. Remember that when you're making your bets." Billy met Lily's eyes, wanting to say something, anything, to crack the spell of Cass's words. But all he managed was a hoarse, "We have to go, now." As they slipped out the shack's back door and into the pre-dawn chill, Lily's expression was a storm of gratitude, fear, and something harder to name. They rode in silence for hours, the land slowly brightening around them. When they finally stopped, it was in a ravine that funneled into the outskirts of a larger town, Mesilla, with its low adobe buildings and bustling plaza. The kind of place people disappeared in, or got found in, depending on how their luck ran. "We can't go in together," Billy said. "Too many eyes. I'll scout a place we can hole up. You keep low here. What if you don't come back?" Lily asked quietly. What if she was right? He gritted his teeth. "She ain't right," he said. "About all of it. But she was right once," Lily said. "About her brother. About you leaving." He looked away toward the town, the weight of his own history pressing heavy. "I can't change what already happened," he murmured. "All I can do is try to outrun the next mistake a little longer." Her jaw tightened. "Maybe you're just running from yourself, Billy." He didn't have an answer. By the time they crept into Mesilla's back streets and found themselves pinned in an abandoned freight yard, her words were still echoing in his head. They'd tried to use alleys and side paths. They'd tried to move like ghosts, but money this loud calls to every ear. Guns glinted from rooftops. Men with battered hats and cold eyes slipped out of doorways, closing the circle tighter. They ended up pressed against a stack of old shipping crates, bullets smashing into the boards above their heads, showering them with splinters and dust. Lily flinched as a chunk of crate exploded inches from her shoulder. "We're surrounded," she gasped. "No kidding," Billy said, breathless. He peered through a gap between crates and saw at least a dozen rifles aimed their way, maybe more. Among the faceless ranks he recognized Sheriff Dunning, the man from San Miguel, arm in a sling, left hand steady on his gun. Near him stood Amos Hale, Lily's father, looking smaller somehow, his hat crushed in his fists. Beside them, immaculate as ever, Bartholomew Crane surveyed the scene like a man inspecting cattle before slaughter. "Billy," Lily whispered. "What do we do?" "We keep their heads down as long as we can," he said. "Maybe they get sloppy. That's your plan," she snapped. "Hope they trip over their own boots?" A bullet ricocheted off the crate near her ear, answering for him. Then suddenly, Crane's voice boomed across the yard. "Cease fire," he roared. "Hold your fire, damn you. You'll hit the girl." The shooting stuttered, then died. Silence, hot and quivering, settled over the freight yard, broken only by the distant whinny of horses and the creak of settling crates. Billy and Lily huddled close, breathing hard. Crane's voice carried again, smooth and cold. "Billy the Kid," he called. "Lily Hale, I know you're in there. You've got nowhere left to run. Every alley's covered, every rooftop's got a gun on it. You're boxed in." Billy glanced at Lily. She stared back, eyes wide but steady. "You hear me?" Crane went on. "I'm a reasonable man. You come out now, hands up, and maybe I let the girl live long enough to honor our agreement." He chuckled, the sound like a knife being sharpened. "Or you stay in there, and we burn you out. I don't much care how your story ends, kid. Only that it ends." "He doesn't know exactly where we are," Billy murmured. "He's guessing. That buys us a sliver." "A sliver of what?" Lily whispered back. "Of hope, or just more time to die scared." Billy studied her. In the narrow space between the crates, her face was half in shadow, half in the dust-filtered light. She looked very young and very old all at once. "You still trust me?" he asked. "After what Cass said?" Her jaw worked. "I don't know," she admitted. The honesty hurt more than a bullet. Crane's voice sliced through again. "Clock's ticking, boy. You really want this girl to die for you?" Lily flinched, as if the words struck flesh. For a long, taut moment, nobody moved. Then Lily set her jaw. "He's not going to stop," she said quietly. "Not until one of us is dead or back on his ranch. Then we make him pay for every inch," Billy said. "You don't owe him anything. You don't owe your PA anything either." "I know," she said. "But I owe you something." Before he could ask what she meant, she moved. She slipped out from behind the crate before his hand could close on her sleeve, stepping into the open wedge of sun like a figure in a story, stepping onto a stage. Billy grabbed for her, fingers brushing her skirt, but she twisted free. The yard erupted in shouts. Rifles swung toward her. "Don't shoot," Crane yelled sharply. "She's worth 5,000 alive, you idiots." Lily raised her hands slowly, palms empty. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would push through her ribs, but her voice, when it came, was clear and steady. "I'm here," she called. "Lily Hale, I'm alone." Billy stared, stunned from the shadows. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Saving your life, you idiot," she muttered, under her breath, so low he barely heard it. Out loud, she repeated. Louder. "I'm alone. Billy the Kid ran when he saw you coming. He left me." The lie hit him like a fist to the gut. Somewhere among the men, somebody laughed harshly. "That sounds like him," another voice called. Little Snake slithered off. Crane narrowed his eyes. "If he's gone, why should I believe you just stroll out here?" "Because I'm tired," Lily said. And in that, at least, there was truth. "Because I'd rather face you than burn." She cast one quick cutting look back into the gap where Billy hid, and in that look he saw more than words, the echo of Cass's accusations, the weight of every rumor about him, and something else, a stubborn, reckless kind of love that was willing to split itself in two if it meant he might live. "Don't do this," he whispered, barely audible, but she'd already stepped beyond words. Two men moved in cautiously, rifles trained on her as they closed the distance. They grabbed her arms, binding her wrists. Crane stepped forward, studying her like she was a horse he was considering buying, instead of one he'd already paid for. "Search the crates," he ordered, just in case the kids crawled in there like a rat. In the confusion of men fanning out into the yard, no one noticed the narrow drainage ditch that led from behind the freight stacks to a culvert at the far end of the yard. No one saw the slim, desperate form that slipped into it, scraping skin and pride alike on rough stone as it wriggled through. Billy emerged in an alley, choked with weeds and trash, lungs burning, curses raw on his tongue. He wanted to charge back in shooting, to tear Lily from their hands with a hail of bullets. But he also heard her voice, in his head, saying she'd rather he lived, and Cass's voice, sneering that he'd always choose his own skin. For once, running didn't feel like choosing himself, it felt like swallowing poison. By the time the sun hung low and fat in the sky, Billy's horse stood tied outside a nameless saloon, 2 days' ride away, and Billy sat inside trying to drown in cheap whiskey. The room was dim, the air thick with smoke and murmurs, cards slapped on a table somewhere. A piano in the corner had given up trying to be in tune. Billy hunched over the bar, staring into his drink, as if it might offer answers instead of oblivion. An empty stool scraped beside him. "Rough day?" a woman's voice asked, low and warm. He glanced sideways. The woman who'd taken the seat was no saloon girl, in painted lace, but something sharper and more dangerous. Her hair was swept up under a hat, but he could see glossy dark strands escaping. Her dress, if you could call it that, was a tailored riding habit, the color of storm clouds, fitting her like a secret. Her eyes were a green that watched more than they told. She didn't look at him like a legend. She looked at him like a puzzle. "My friend's had a run of bad luck," Billy said, surprising himself by playing along. "Your friend," she repeated. "What's his name?" "Doesn't matter," he said. "Folks call him all sorts of things. Let's just say he's a man who keeps making the same mistakes and hoppin' they'll turn out different. That's most men," she said dryly. "What did your friend do?" Billy rolled the glass between his palms. "He found a girl," he said slowly, standing on a crate while her father and a rich man counted out money for her like she was a mule. He cut her loose, rode off with her, made every greedy son of a bitch in the territory decide his head was worth a fortune. The woman's gaze rested on him, steady. "Doesn't sound like a mistake yet." "Give it time," Billy muttered. "See this friend of mine. He ain't exactly reliable. He's got a past like a tornado. Anything close to him gets torn up." An old lover of his showed up, told the girl about all the times he'd chosen the gun over the people who trusted him. The girl started wondering if riding with him was just a longer road to the same hell. And was it? The woman asked. I don't know, Billy admitted. They got cornered in a town. Trapped. No way out. That didn't end with both of them dead. The girl, she stepped out. Told the men hunting him he'd run. Said he left her. She surrendered so he could slip away. So she lied, the woman said. Yeah, Billy said bitterly. Now the whole territory'll say, see, Billy the Kid ran and left another one behind. And they'll be right. The woman studied his profile. You're very invested in this friend of yours, she observed. Yeah, well, he said, staring into the amber swirl of his drink, he's the only one I can't seem to outrun. So your friend, she went on. This faithless, dangerous man, what did he do after the girl surrendered? He ran, Billy said. Because she wanted him to. Because she was buying his life with hers, and he was too damn cowardly and too damn noble to throw that away in one last blaze of glory. The woman tilted her head, or she suggested softly, because he believed her when she said she wanted him to live. Because he finally let someone else make the choice for him. He blinked, thrown. That's an awfully generous way of looking at it. A faint smile curved her lips. Sometimes the truth is generous. Sometimes it's cruel. Depends what angle you catch it from. She reached for his glass, took it from his hands before he could react and set it aside. So what now? She asked. Does your friend crawl into a bottle and stay there, while the girl pays the price for being brave and foolish in equal measure? What else is he supposed to do? Billy muttered. Ride straight into Crane's ranch and get himself shot full of holes? That doesn't help her. Running doesn't help her either, she said. All it does is prove that the old lover was right about him. Her eyes flicked to his. Is she? She asked. Right? He opened his mouth, closed it, feeling as if someone had peeled back his skin and poked at the things underneath. She said he always picks himself, he whispered. But it's not that simple, I mean for my friend. Maybe it is simple, the woman said. Maybe your friend just never had something worth choosing over his own skin. Until now. Her hand brushed his, briefly, and instinct made him turn fully toward her. The lamplight caught the angle of her cheek, the shape of her mouth. Something in him jolted, a recognition running deeper than the false conversation they'd been having. Cass, he breathed. She smiled without humor. Took you long enough, Henry. He sagged back on the stool. You followed me. You're not hard to trail when you leave a storm. Everywhere you go, she said. Word travels fast when there's $15,000 nailed to every wall. I heard about Miscilla. Heard how you and the girl were cornered. Heard she gave herself up and told the world you ran. Her gaze searched his. So I rode after you. I wanted to see if the story was true. Congratulations, he said, acid creeping into his tone. You found out I'm exactly the bastard you said I was. Funny thing, she mused. That's not what I found out at all. He frowned. Then what did you find out? I found out, she said slowly, that an 18-year-old girl who barely knows you was willing to hand herself over to a monster so you could live. And you let her. And then you rode 2 days in the wrong direction, drinking yourself numb instead of riding straight to Crane's door to die trying to get her back. It tells me you care enough to hurt, but you don't yet care enough to act. Her words landed like pebbles, dropped into a deep well. What am I supposed to do, Cass? He rasped. Ride in alone? Storm his house like some dime novel hero? You saw the men he can pay. Hell, you put a couple of them on me yourself. I did, she admitted. Then your girl knocked me on my ass, and you tied me up instead of leaving me for dead. That was inconvenient. Something like rue touched her mouth. Look, Henry Crane's rich, but he's proud. Proud men make mistakes when they think the deck's stacked perfect in their favor. He wants to show you off, dead or alive. He wants the story of how he brought down the kid, and he wants the girl as a trophy. That gives us something. Us? Billy repeated carefully. What happened to cashing in on the reward? Cass's eyes hardened. I rode toward Miscilla thinking I'd sell you out and sleep fine on the money, she said. Then I heard how that girl stepped out alone, how she told the whole damn town you ran to make them look the other way, how she was dragged off kickin' and spittin', and still they kept her alive, because Crane wanted his ceremony. And I remembered how it felt to sit in a room and wait for a man who said he'd come back and didn't. I ain't about to help that happen again, even if the circumstances are twisted. She leaned closer. So I decided if somebody's gonna walk into Crane's den, it's gonna be the two of us. You and me. Not to die, if we can help it. To take her back and make him wish he'd never penned our names on any paper. A slow, disbelieving grin tugged at the corner of Billy's mouth. You're gonna help me? He said. What about Caleb? What about everything I did to you? Pain flickered in her gaze, quick and sharp. I'm not doing this for you, she said. I'm doing it for the girl, and maybe for the version of you I once thought existed. The one who might have chosen differently, if he'd had one more second to think. You really think Crane'll let you ride up to his door with me in tow? Billy asked. Cass's smile turned feral. He'll let me ride up if he thinks I'm delivering the kid. Trust like a hog. He'll open his parlor if he thinks he's already won. She tapped his chest lightly with one finger. Question is, you got one more trick in you, Henry? One more run at being something other than the story they tell about you. Billy felt something steady inside him that hadn't been there in a long time. Yeah, he said. I think I've got one more in me. Crane's ranch spread across the Mesilla Valley like a scar. Whitewashed buildings, a big house with a wraparound porch, corrals full of bawling cattle, bunkhouses for the men who served him. It was the kind of place built on broken backs and signed contracts. In one upper room of the big house, Lily Hale sat on a narrow bed, hands chafed from the rope they'd finally cut, wrists ringed with bruises. A dusty beam of afternoon light slanted through the barred window, carving her profile in gold. The maid assigned to her, a tired Mexican woman with 3 children and no illusions, had tried to fuss with her hair, had laid out a dress that was nicer than any Lily had worn in her life. It lay across the chair untouched. You should put it on, the maid had said softly. If you make him happy, sometimes he is less cruel. I'm not here to make him happy, Lily had replied, voice flat. I'm here because my father sold me, and this man was rich enough to pay. She'd asked, once, if there had been any news of a boy with laughing eyes and a quick draw. The maid had looked away. They say he ran, she'd murmured. They say he squeezed out through a ditch like a rat while you were dragged to the jail. Sheriff Dunning told it like a joke. Lily had turned to the window then, pressing her forehead against the hot bars. Good, she'd said through her teeth, though her eyes burned. I'm glad. Somewhere deep, she knew it wasn't the whole truth, but Cass's words gnawed at her. He'll choose his own hide. In the hollow space where her doubts clashed with her memories of his rough kindness, she felt something harden, not into hate, but into resolve. She could not control what Billy did, she could only control what she did, what she became. If she had to walk into Crane's parlor, she would walk with her head high, not like chattel. Out in the yard, a dust plume announced the arrival of 2 riders. Bartholomew Crane watched from the porch as a woman he did not recognize swung down from her horse, a lanky form slumped over the saddle behind her, hands apparently bound. Mr. Crane, Cass called. I believe I've got something that belongs to you. When they cut Billy down from the saddle, his wrists appeared tied, his head lolled forward. Crane approached, eyes sharp. That's him? That's the kid, Cass said. He was foolish enough to trust me once. I told him I had a hiding place, somewhere we could wait out your hounds. He walked right into my gun. Crane's gaze flicked from Billy's bowed head to Cass's unreadable expression. And you are? He asked. A woman who doesn't let $15,000 ride past her without saying howdy, she said. Name's Cassidy Ward. I've heard of you, Crane said slowly. The whip quick draw. Robbed a payroll wagon near Lincoln. Shot 2 guards and disappeared. They shot first, Cass said. But I won't argue details, if the money's right. Crane gestured. 2 of his men hauled Billy upright, his hat tumbled off, revealing his face. Even slack with feigned unconsciousness, it carried that unmistakable mix of youth and danger the posters had failed to capture. "That him?" Crane asked another man, who'd seen Billy and Masilla. "That's him," the man confirmed. "I'd know that face anywhere." "And the ropes?" Crane asked, eyeing the bindings. "Tied," Cass said. Double nodded. "Want to check him yourself?" Crane stepped forward, fingers prodding the rope at Billy's wrists. What he didn't notice was the tiny sliver of metal tucked against Billy's left palm, the kind of gift only someone who'd tied him before would think to leave. "Take him to the barn," Crane ordered. "I want him alive till after the vows. I'm gonna show my bride how legends fall." "And my money?" Cass asked lightly. "You'll get it tonight," Crane said. "After the ceremony. I prefer to keep all my business in one ledger." A flicker of annoyance crossed Cass's face, but she pasted on a smile. "I'll be here," she said. She watched as they dragged Billy toward the barn, eyes tracking every movement, calculating angles, guard positions, weapon placements. Then she sauntered toward the house, as if invited. Inside, the air was cooler, but no less heavy. She found Lily's room by following the muffled sound of raised voices, a preacher murmuring objections, Crane overriding them with oily insistence. When the maid slipped out for water, Cass slid in through the half-open door. Lily shot to her feet, fists clenched. "You," she hissed. Cass held up her hands. "Relax, girl. I'm not here to hurt you." "You already did," Lily snapped, "with your stories and your poison." "Maybe," Cass said, "but I'm here to fix at least part of that." She leaned against the wall, folding her arms. "The kid's here," she said. Lily froze. "No, he's not." "He is," Cass said. "Tied up in a barn playing possum while Crane struts around like he's already won. He let me capture him so I could walk him through the front gate. Which ought to tell you something." Lily's pulse hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help him, after everything?" Cass considered her. "Because I saw how you looked at him," she said. "And I saw how you stepped out of that freight yard. You made a choice I wish I'd had the courage to make once. I'll be damned if I let that go to waste." "So what's your plan?" Lily asked, voice tight. "You and he ride off into the sunset, and leave me here after all." "Don't be stupid," Cass said. "You're the whole point." She stepped closer. "They're gonna bring you down to that parlor soon. Crane's got some preacher talking over vows he doesn't believe in. While everyone's eyes are on his fancy speech, we make our move. There'll be confusion. Guns will go off. You need to decide, right now, who you're gonna trust when that happens." Lily's mind flashed back to the freight yard, to Billy sliding into that culvert while she was dragged away, to the sick twist in her gut when the sheriff laughed about him running, to Cass's earlier contempt. "Why should I trust either of you?" she demanded. "You lie. He runs." "Maybe," Cass said softly. "But here's what I learned the hard way. A man can be a coward one day and brave the next. People ain't statues. They move. They change. Sometimes too late, sometimes just in time. You got a chance to see which one this is." Lily sank back onto the bed, heart pounding. "And if I pick wrong?" she whispered. Cass's eyes were steady. "Then you survive anyway," she said. "Not by waiting for a man to save you, but by saving yourself. Take whatever chance opens, and run through it like the devil's on your heels." Down in the barn, Billy flexed his hands, feeling the metal sliver bite his skin as he worked at the rope. He could hear the murmur of preparations outside. Men laughing, boots scuffing, someone tuning a fiddle for the grotesque celebration Crane had planned. He thought of Lily upstairs, of the look on her face when she'd stepped into the freight yard, of the words she'd thrown at him in that ravine. "Maybe you're just running from yourself." "Not this time," he muttered. The rope finally gave. He rolled his shoulders, ignoring the stab of returning blood flow, and slipped his hands free, just as the barn door creaked open. A guard stepped in, yawning. "Boss wants the kid alive," he reminded the other man, who had been toying with the idea of a little preemptive beating.
He wants to show him off. Don't look so disappointed, Billy said, rising smoothly. Show's startin'. The man barely had time to register the movement before Billy's fist crashed into his jaw. The second guard lunged, but Billy spun, grabbed the pitchfork leaning nearby, and swung the handle into the man's stomach. He doubled over, gasping. Billy dropped them both, tied them with their own rope, and grabbed a rifle on his way out. In the house, Crane had gathered his audience in the parlor, a gaggle of local dignitaries, more loyal to his money than any law. A preacher sweating through his collar, Sheriff Dunning with his sling, Amos Hale with haunted eyes. Lily stood at the far end of the room in the dress. The maid had finally persuaded her to put on, not because she wanted to look pretty for Crane, but because armor sometimes comes in lace, instead of steel. Crane preened beside her, one hand possessive on her arm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he was saying, "today we rectify a grave wrong. This girl was stolen from me by an outlaw who thought himself above contract and decency. Now she is returned, and we will bind our agreement before God and man." "God might beg to differ," Lily murmured. Crane's fingers tightened painfully. "Smile," he hissed. Cass slipped in along the wall, unnoticed, her hand resting lightly on the revolver at her hip. She caught Lily's eye and gave the smallest nod. Lily's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The preacher cleared his throat, opened his Bible, and began to speak. The words blurred, droning about duty and obedience, and the sanctity of vows. Lily heard another voice beneath it, Cass's warning, and Billy's weary confession in her own, younger voice from years ago, promising herself she'd never be as weak as the women in stories, who let men decide their fate. When the preacher asked, "Who gives this woman?" Amos Hale stepped forward, voice shaking. "I do," he said. "I gave her once already. This makes it official." Lily turned on him. "You're really going to stand there and do this?" she demanded. Amos flinched. "I'm trying to keep the family alive, Lily." "You're killing me to do it," she said. Before anyone could answer, the distant crack of a gunshot cut through the house. Conversation stuttered. Crane's head snapped up. "What was that?" he barked. One of his men burst into the doorway, breathless. "Barn," he gasped. "The kid. He's loose." For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then the parlor exploded into motion. Men lunged for their guns. Crane shoved Lily behind him, shouting orders. Cass moved in that same breath, her revolver clearing leather faster than most eyes could follow. She fired at the chandelier, sending it crashing down in a shower of glass and sparks. The room plunged into chaos and shadow. "Move," she yelled at Lily. Lily didn't think. She grabbed a wine bottle from a sideboard and smashed it over the head of the nearest man reaching for her. He dropped like a stone. Cass grabbed her wrist, dragging her toward the side door. A bullet slammed into the doorframe inches from Lily's head. Another tore through Cass's sleeve, scoring a line of fire along her arm. She hissed, but didn't slow. They burst out into the blinding sun of the yard, just as Billy appeared from the barn, dirt-streaked and wild-eyed, rifle in hand. For a heartbeat, Lily's breath caught. He was there, in the open, running toward danger instead of away. Cass glanced at her. "Well?" she shouted over the din. "You gonna stand there? Or you gonna decide what kind of girl you are?" That decided it. Lily ran toward him, not away.
At that same instant, Billy spotted Crane emerging onto the porch, shoving Lily's father in front of him like partial cover as he aimed a pistol. Billy's gut snarled. He sprinted, firing at the men pouring out of the bunkhouse. Cass peeled off to the side, laying down covering fire with quick, precise shots. Lily ducked behind a water trough, grabbing the fallen gun of a man Cass had dropped. She checked the chamber with fingers that trembled for only a second before steadiness settled in. Bullets shrieked past. Crane bellowed, "Kill the kid! Leave the girl alive!" A shot rang out from the porch, aimed straight at Billy's back. Lily saw it before anyone else did. Time slowed. Cass was too far to intervene. Billy was focused on another shooter, his body turned just enough that he'd never see it coming. Amos Hale saw it too. In that heartbeat, something in Lily's father broke loose from the fear and selfishness that had held him. He lunged sideways, slamming into Crane's arm. The shot went wild, punching into the dirt near Billy's feet. Crane cursed and turned on Amos, fury etched deep. "You stupid old fool," he snarled, driving the pistol into Amos's ribs and firing point blank. Lily screamed as her father staggered, eyes wide with shock, and collapsed on the porch steps, blood blooming across his shirt. For a second, grief stole her breath. Then a cold, clear fury settled in its place. She lifted the pistol, drew a bead on Crane as he raised his weapon again, this time toward her. "You don't own me," she whispered, and pulled the trigger. The bullet hit him high in the chest. He stumbled backward, mouth opening in disbelief. Another shot cracked almost simultaneously. Billy's and slammed into Crane's shoulder, spinning him. Crane toppled off the porch, landing hard in the dust. The men who'd been fighting under his orders faltered, uncertainty rippling through them. Cass took advantage of the hesitation, stepping into the open, gun trained not on them, but on Crane's prone form. "Here's your new deal, boys," she called. "Crane's dead or dying. That makes his promises worth about as much as dust. You got two choices: keep shooting at the kid and the girl, and maybe die for a man who won't be around to pay you, or drop your guns and walk away with your skins intact." Sheriff Dunning, clutching his sling and bleeding pride, looked around at the faces of Crane's men. One by one, weapons lowered. The sheriff cursed under his breath, then let his own gun fall to the ground. "This ain't over," he muttered. "For today it is," Billy said, walking forward, rifle still ready. "Get off this land, don't come back." The men began backing away, some grabbing saddlebags, others just their hats. In the sudden, fragile quiet that followed, Lily dropped to her knees beside her father. Amos blinked up at her, breath rattling. "Lily," he wheezed. "I tried." "You did," she said, tears finally spilling over. "Too late, but you did." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "I thought I could save the boys, the farm." "You could have saved me," she whispered. "You still can. Tell me you're sorry, and then let go." His eyes filled with pain that wasn't entirely physical. "I'm sorry," he choked. "I was a coward." She squeezed his hand until his fingers went slack. Billy stood a few feet away, hat in his hands, watching the scene with something like hollow understanding in his eyes. Cass, leaning against a post, pressed a strip of cloth to her bleeding arm, jaw tight. When Lily finally rose, face pale but set, she walked straight to Billy. "You came back," she said, simply. "Yeah," he said. "I did." "Why?" She searched his face. "Because you felt guilty. Because you needed to prove her wrong." He glanced at Cass, then back at Lily. "Maybe at first," he admitted. "But then I realized I didn't want your story to end with you being something a man bought and sold. Not because of your PA. Not because of me. I wanted you to get a say." She let that settle, weighing it against Cass's warnings and her own bruised heart. "Back at the freight yard," she said slowly. "When I stepped out, I told them you ran. I said it so they'd think you were long gone, and you were. But not because you were choosing yourself. You were choosing the life I was buying you. That's different. Doesn't change the fact that you were dragged off alone," he said. "Doesn't change what it cost you." "Maybe not," she said. "But what you did here changed something else. You didn't run this time. When the walls closed in, you ran toward me, not away. That's worth something." Cass snorted softly. "Look at that," she said. "The kid finally picked someone else's life over his legend." He shot her a look. "Don't spread it around, it'll ruin my reputation." "Your reputation's already ruined," she said. "Might as well earn it for the right reasons." They searched Crane's house that evening, not for trophies, but for practical salvation. In his safe, they found stacks of cash, deeds to land, contracts that had bled the valley dry. Lily stared at the money with a complicated expression. "This is all stolen," she said. One way or another. Then maybe it ought to go back, Billy said. Piece by piece. Over the next day, Cass and Lily rode to a handful of the families worst burned by Crane's greed, leaving envelopes behind. Sometimes on doorsteps, sometimes pressed into trembling hands. They never said where it came from. People would tell their own stories, they always did. Some would say the ghost of Crane paid his debts. Others would whisper about the kid and the girl he didn't leave behind. When the dust of those errands finally settled, the three of them found themselves at a crossroads, both literal and otherwise, watching the sun sink over the desert. The wind smelled of sage and something like possibility. What now? Cass asked, swinging lightly out of her saddle. You two gonna ride off together and give the balladeers something to sing about? Lily looked at Billy, then at the road stretching east, toward places she'd only heard about in stories. I can't ride with him, she said quietly. Not because I don't care, but because everywhere he goes, death follows. That's not all his fault, but it's true. If I stay with him, I'm choosing that for myself. I've had enough of men choosing my future. Billy flinched, then nodded slowly. You're probably right, he said. I ain't exactly a safe bet. That doesn't mean you're not worth anything, she said. You saved me, twice. Maybe 3 times if we count the day you didn't take the easy money. She stepped closer, reaching up to touch his face lightly, fingers tracing the line of his cheek. You're not the monster they say you are, she murmured. But you're not the hero either. You're just a man who's trying too late and too fast. He caught her hand, pressed it briefly to his lips, then let it go. What will you do? He asked. Go east, she said. Find a town where Crane's name is just a rumor, and my father's isn't known at all. Maybe start a little business. Maybe marry a man someday who doesn't think a contract is the same thing as love. But whatever I do, it'll be because I chose it. Cass watched them with an unreadable expression. You could ride with me a while, she told Lily. World's a rough place for a woman alone. I know the roads, and I could use someone who doesn't flinch when it's time to shoot. Lily considered that, then smiled faintly. Maybe for a while, she said, until the roads feel less like enemies. And you? Cass asked Billy. Where you headed, Henry? He looked toward the north, to the thin line of hills that pointed toward Fort Sumner, and a future history would write in blood. I got some ghosts up that way, he said. Old debts, a sheriff with my name carved on a bullet. Feels like I'm riding toward the end of my own story, whether I like it or not. Cass stepped close enough that he could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. You know, you could ride the other way, she said. Leave Garrett and the rest choking on your dust. He shook his head. I've been running my whole life, he said. Maybe there's a point where a man stops, turns to face whatever's coming, not because he's tired of living, but because he's tired of dragging everyone else into his storm. She studied him, then nodded slowly. When the songs get written, she said, they'll tell it however they want. They'll make you bigger and worse than you were. But there'll be a girl somewhere back east, maybe selling dresses or fixing saddles, who'll know the truth. Lily smiled, eyes shining. Every time someone says you ran, she said, I'll remember the day you came back, and I'll tell them the kid wasn't just a gun. He was a man who for once chose somebody else. Billy swallowed hard. You watch yourself, Lily Hale, he said. World's still cruel, even without Crane. I know, she answered, but I've got a better shot now. Thanks to you, and her. She nodded at Cass. Funny pair of guardian angels, Cass said, half laughing. Don't count on us growing halos. They parted at the crossroads, dust rising around their horses' hooves like the last breath of a story. Lily and Cass rode east, silhouettes shrinking against the morning. Billy turned north, toward whatever waited for him. He didn't look back, but he carried the memory of Lily's gaze and Cass's grudging respect like a talisman, something to weigh against the bullets and the lonely nights. Years later, in a town far from Mesilla, an old woman would tell her grandchildren about the time Billy the Kid rode through her life, not as a terror, but as a boy with world-weary eyes who cut a girl down from a wooden crate and gave her the chance to choose her own fate. The children would ask if he was a hero or a villain, and she would shake her head and say, he was a little of both, like most of us. But for one girl, once, he was enough. And now, if you've ridden along with Billy, Lily, and Cass all the way to this dusty crossroads, take a moment to breathe, to feel the weight of their choices, and then let me know what you thought. Give this story a score from 0 to 10, subscribe so you don't miss the next ride through the Old West, and leave a like to keep these campfire tales burning a little longer.